Captain David Nash wiped the ice crystals from his helmet visor as he stared across the frozen wasteland of Kessler 7. The wind howled like an angry beast, carrying with it the bitter cold that could freeze human blood in minutes. Around him, the supply convoy stretched across the white landscape like a wounded snake, moving slowly toward the northern outpost. David had led many missions, but something about this one felt wrong. The silence was too complete. The air tasted like danger. He sat inside the armored transport, watching the landscape roll past through the reinforced window. His team sat beside him, checking weapons and reading reports on their tablets. David was a tall man with broad shoulders and scars on his face that told stories of battles fought across 3 different planets. His eyes were sharp and always moving, always watching for threats. After 15 years in the military, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now his instincts screamed that death was waiting somewhere ahead. The radio crackled. "Captain, movement on the East Ridge. Looks like Xinthian scouts." David's jaw tightened. The Xinthian collective had been hunting the Coalition supply lines for weeks. They were brutal aliens who lived only for conquest and destruction. Their bodies were covered in hard armor plating, and they moved with the speed of predators. David had seen what they could do to a defenseless colony. He had no intention of letting that happen here. "All units, defensive positions." "Now," David commanded into the radio. The convoy stopped. Soldiers jumped from the transports and took positions behind the heavy equipment and cargo containers. David grabbed his rifle and moved to the front of the convoy where he could see the ridge. Through his scope he spotted them. 7 Xinthian warriors, moving like shadows against the white snow. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time, with their dark purple skin and weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Then something unexpected happened. From the center transport emerged Elena, a young Valerian diplomat. She was not a soldier. Her people, the Valerians, were delicate beings made of something that looked like crystal but was actually living tissue. They were fragile and gentle, and they had no place in a combat zone. Elena had insisted on coming to Kessler 7 to negotiate terms of the alliance. David had argued against it, but the commanders had ordered her protection anyway. Elena was small, perhaps 5 feet tall, with skin that sparkled like diamonds in the light. Her eyes were large and luminous, filled with intelligence and kindness. She was not armed. She carried only a communication device and her courage. When she saw the Xinthians, she froze. "Get back inside," David shouted. But it was too late. The Xinthian attack began. Plasma bolts tore through the air, burning hot enough to melt metal. The Coalition soldiers returned fire, their weapons lighting up the frozen landscape with streaks of red and green energy. The battle was fierce and fast and terrible. One of the Xinthian soldiers moved faster than the others, breaking through the defensive line. In his hands he carried an ion grenade, one of the most deadly weapons in existence. These grenades did not just explode. They created a field of ionized energy that would destroy everything within 50 meters. Nothing could survive it. Not humans, not Valerians, not anything. The Xinthian warrior raised the grenade and activated it. The core began to glow and pulse with increasing brightness. His target was clear. He was aiming for the spot where Elena stood, frozen in fear, unable to move. David did not think. He did not calculate. He did not consider the odds or the physics or the certainty of death. His body simply moved. Later his team would try to explain what they saw, but none of them could quite put it into words. Captain David Nash ran across open ground, faster than any human should be able to run. He dodged plasma fire and leaped over obstacles. Every step brought him closer to Elena and closer to the armed grenade. Elena saw him coming and finally understood what was happening. Her eyes went wide with horror as she realized his intention. She tried to scream his name, but the sound was lost in the roar of battle. David reached Elena just as the Xinthian released the grenade. In one smooth motion, David grabbed Elena and threw her backward, away from the blast zone. Then he turned and faced the grenade head-on. His body was large and solid and he positioned himself directly in front of the detonation point. He threw his arms up in front of his face, a gesture that would offer no protection against the power of an ion grenade, but it was all he could do. The explosion was like the birth of a star. Blue-white light flooded across the frozen landscape. Heat beyond description washed across the ice, melting it instantly into water that steamed and boiled. The sound was deafening, a thunderclap that echoed across the mountains. For a moment, there was only light and heat and destruction. When the light faded, Captain David Nash was gone. Where he had stood, there was only scorched earth and blackened ice. His suit was shredded. His body was burned beyond recognition. He had taken the full force of an ion grenade to save the life of a stranger from an alien species. Elena lay on the ground 50 meters away, her crystalline body intact but shaking with shock and grief. She screamed his name over and over, but there was no answer. David Nash, brave and noble, had given his life to save hers. The remaining Xinthian warriors, seeing their trap had failed and their numbers were too few, retreated back over the ridge and disappeared into the snow. The coalition soldiers secured the area. The battle was over, but the cost was almost too high to bear. One of the greatest humans ever to wear the uniform had made the ultimate sacrifice. Elena knelt beside the spot where David had stood, tears streaming down her crystalline face, and whispered goodbye to the man who had died saving her life. David's first sensation was pain. Not the sharp pain of a fresh wound, but a deep, burning pain that lived in every part of his body. His skin felt like it was on fire. His bones felt like they had been broken into pieces and put back together wrong. He tried to open his eyes, but the light was too bright, too harsh, too painful to look at. He tried to move his hands, but something held him in place. Panic rose in his chest as he realized he could not move at all. Then a voice spoke, soft and gentle, almost musical in its tone. "Captain Nash, you are safe now. Do not try to move. Your body is still healing." David's eyes adjusted to the light, and slowly he began to understand where he was. He was not dead. Somehow, impossibly, he was still alive. He floated inside some kind of transparent chamber filled with a glowing blue liquid that felt warm and soothing against his ruined skin. Around the chamber, machines beeped and hummed with constant activity. Screens displayed information in languages he did not recognize. Tubes ran into his arms and chest, delivering medicines and nutrients directly into his bloodstream. Standing around him were three figures that looked nothing like any human he had ever seen. The first was a Valerian, but not Elena. This Valerian was older, with skin that sparkled with deeper colors of blue and purple. Her hands glowed with a soft white light as she moved them over David's body, never quite touching him but somehow working on him nonetheless. Behind her stood a massive creature made of dark metal and thick bone. This was a Krell, one of the strongest species in the galaxy. The Krell had a face that looked almost like a bull, with thick horns and deep-set eyes that showed surprising intelligence. The third figure was even stranger. It was a Theron, a being that looked like it was made of pure energy contained inside a loosely humanoid shape. Its form shimmered and changed constantly, like watching fire take the shape of a person. "Where am I?" David tried to ask, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. "You are in the medical station aboard the Celestial Hope," the older Valerian said. "I am Dr. Lyris. This is Engineer Krell named Thorn, and this is the Theron named Zeph. We have been working to save your life for the past 72 hours. David wanted to ask how they had found him, how they had saved him from the ion explosion. But his mind felt foggy and confused. The pain medicines they had given him made everything seem distant and unreal, like he was watching his own life from far away. Over the next few days, David slowly became aware of what had happened. A scout team had found his body almost immediately after the explosion. Most of his body had been burned severely. His skin was charred. His lungs had been damaged from breathing superheated air. His bones had been fractured in multiple places. By any normal measure, he should have been dead. No medical team should have been able to save him. But the coalition had brought him here, to this advanced medical facility, and they had assembled the best doctors from 3 different species to work on him. Dr. Lyris explained that the Valerians had a way of using light and energy to heal damaged tissue. Thorn, the Krell engineer, had built special machines that could repair the damage done to David's internal organs. And Zeph, the Theron, had used his unique understanding of energy and consciousness to keep David's mind from shutting down as his body tried to heal itself. What they discovered during those first days shocked all of them. "Your species is remarkable," Dr. Lyris said to David one morning as she checked the data on her instruments. "We did not expect you to survive even 1 hour after the injury you sustained. And yet, your cells are regenerating. Your body is adapting to the healing treatments in ways we have never seen before." Thorn the Krell leaned down, his massive frame casting a shadow over David's healing chamber. His voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "Human physiology is more durable than the record suggested. Your muscle tissue has an unusual structure. Your bones have a density we did not anticipate. Your neural pathways are rebuilding themselves faster than they should." Zeph the Theron spoke with a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "Most species would have lost consciousness permanently. The human mind remains intact. Resilient. Remarkable." Elena came to see David every day. She sat beside his healing chamber and spoke to him even when he could not answer. She told him about the battle, about how his sacrifice had inspired the entire coalition. She told him about the soldiers who had risked their lives to retrieve his body from the frozen ground. She told him that everyone was calling him a hero. "You should not have done it," Elena said one day, her voice filled with emotion. "You should have let me die. I am just one Valerian. You are a captain. Your life was worth more than mine." David tried to shake his head, but the machines kept him still. When he finally regained enough strength to speak, the first words from his burned throat were, "Your life matters, Elena. Every life matters. That is why I did it." The Theron called Zeph floated closer to David's chamber. "The human speaks a truth that many species have forgotten. You do not calculate the value of life. You simply know that it is precious. That is a strength we had not recognized before." After 2 weeks, David's skin began to regrow. His burns started to heal, leaving behind new tissue that was slightly different from before but stronger and more resilient. His bones mended. His lungs cleared. His mind became sharp again. The medicines and treatments worked together in ways that seemed almost miraculous. And through it all, the 3 doctors worked tirelessly, learning from David's human body even as they healed it. They had expected to lose him. Instead, they were witnessing something they had never seen before. They were witnessing the incredible power of human determination to survive, combined with human willingness to sacrifice everything for others. By the end of the 3rd week, David could sit up in his healing chamber. By the end of the 4th week he could stand. And on the day they released him from the medical chamber, the entire staff came to see him walk. It was a moment that would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The day the human came back from death itself. The news of Captain David Nash's recovery spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Messages traveled from ship to ship, from station to station, reaching every corner of the coalition forces. A human soldier had survived an ion grenade explosion. Not just survived but recovered completely. Scientists and military leaders began to ask questions that had never been asked before. What made humans so different? What hidden strength did the human species possess that no one had ever recognized? The High Command decided to send David to a research facility on the neutral station called Nexus Point. Scientists from every species wanted to study him, to understand him, to learn the secrets of human resilience. David did not want to go. He wanted to return to his unit and continue fighting. But the orders came from the highest levels and he had no choice but to obey. The research facility was cold and sterile, filled with machines and instruments designed to measure and analyze every aspect of the human body. David spent his days being tested in ways he had never imagined. They measured his strength. They tested his reflexes. They scanned his brain with machines that showed them how he thought and how he felt. They took samples of his blood and examined his cells under powerful microscopes. Through it all, David remained patient and cooperative. He understood that what they were learning might help save human lives in the future. One day, Dr. Lyris came to see him in the testing chamber. She was not alone. With her came a Krell general named Corvin. The general was enormous, standing nearly 9 feet tall, with skin like dark stone and muscles that seemed to move like mountains under his body. General Corvin had fought in more wars than David had been alive. His eyes were ancient and weary, filled with the knowledge of countless battles and countless deaths. "Captain Nash," General Corvin said, his voice deep and slow. "We have been studying the data from your medical recovery. We have analyzed your physiology. We have examined your psychological profile. And we have reached conclusions that trouble us greatly." David stood at attention. "Yes, sir. What have you found?" The general moved closer, his massive frame dwarfing everything around him. "In 300 years of space exploration, I have studied the physiology of 17 different species. I have seen strength and speed and intelligence in forms you cannot imagine. But there is something in you, in your kind, that we do not understand. When you faced that ion grenade, you made a choice that our computers calculated to have a 0% chance of success. You chose to die to save another. Not because you expected reward. Not because you calculated benefit. But simply because you decided that her life was worth yours." David did not know what to say. He had never thought of his actions as anything special. To him it had been simple. Elena needed help. He could provide it. Nothing else mattered. Dr. Lyris spoke next. "We have studied human history, Captain. Your species has a long record of self-sacrifice. Humans regularly put themselves in danger to save strangers. Humans will die for ideals and beliefs. Humans will forgive those who harm them even at great personal cost. We have never seen this in other species, at least not to this degree." A Theron scientist named Ventral appeared in the chamber, his form shimmering with colors of green and gold. Our collective consciousness analyzed human poetry, music, and art. All of it speaks to the same truth. Humans understand something that we do not. You understand that love is worth more than survival. That compassion is worth more than safety. These are not logical conclusions, Captain. And yet your species built civilizations around them. David listened as the scientists explained their findings. They had discovered that humans had several unique qualities that made them powerful in ways no one had expected. First, humans had remarkable adaptability. They could survive in almost any environment. They could learn new skills quickly. They could solve problems in creative ways because they did not always think in straight lines like other species did. Second, humans had exceptional pain tolerance combined with strong will to survive. When David had been burned by the ion grenade, his body had not simply shut down. It had fought to stay alive. It had adapted to the damage and begun healing itself in ways that defied normal biology. But the most important discovery was something the scientists called human empathy. It was the ability to feel what others felt, to care about the suffering of others, to put yourself in another person's position and understand their pain. This empathy made humans willing to sacrifice. It made them loyal to their teams. It made them protective of the weak and vulnerable. General Corvin stood before David and placed a massive hand on his shoulder. In my 300 years, I have learned that true strength is not measured only in muscle and weapons. The Krell are physically stronger than any human. We can lift more weight. We can run faster. We can hit harder. But we lack something. We lack the will to sacrifice ourselves for others. We are warriors, but we are not heroes. You, Captain Nash, are a hero. Your species produces heroes. Over the following weeks, more and more information came out about humans and their unique abilities. News channels across the galaxy broadcast stories about human soldiers who had saved the lives of their comrades. They showed examples of humans choosing to go on rescue missions knowing they might die. They highlighted stories of human kindness and forgiveness. Slowly, the perception of humanity began to change. Other species started to request human soldiers for their military units. Not because humans were the strongest or the fastest, but because humans made their teams better. Human presence inspired loyalty. Human sacrifice inspired courage. Human compassion inspired hope. Elena came to see David at the research facility. She stood in the observation window and watched as technicians ran their final tests on his recovered body. Her crystalline face reflected the light of the instruments. "They are calling you an ambassador," she said. "An ambassador for your entire species. They are beginning to understand that humans are not weak as we once thought. Humans are different. Stronger in ways we never measured before." David looked at Elena and smiled. "We are only strong because we care about each other. That is all it ever was." Elena placed her delicate hand against the glass that separated them. "That is why your species will change the galaxy, David. You have shown us something we forgot. You have shown us that the heart is as important as the mind. That love is as important as logic. That sacrifice is as important as survival." Captain David Nash stood in the war room of the Coalition flagship, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots showed Xinthian positions. Blue dots showed Coalition forces. The war had been going on for 8 months now, and the Coalition was losing ground. Xinthian attacks were becoming more frequent and more coordinated. Entire planets were falling to their invasion force. Something had to change or the galaxy would fall under Xinthian control within a year. A hologram flickered to life beside David. It was General Corvin, the Krell commander. Behind him, David could see Dr. Lyris and several other Coalition leaders. Their faces were serious and worried. "Captain Nash," General Corvin said, "we have a mission for you. It is dangerous. It may be suicide. But it is our only chance to turn this war around." David did not hesitate. "I am ready, sir. What do you need?" The general gestured to the holographic map. A planet appeared, shrouded in thick clouds of toxic gas. The planet was called Vorax 9 and it was a hellhole. The atmosphere was poisonous to almost all life forms. The ground was covered in caustic chemicals. The temperature fluctuated wildly between burning heat and freezing cold. No civilized species could survive there for more than a few hours. But the Xinthians had built a massive military stronghold deep beneath the surface. From that stronghold, they coordinated all their attacks across the galaxy. If the Coalition could destroy that stronghold, they could cripple the entire Xinthian command structure. The war could turn in their favor. "The mission is to infiltrate the stronghold and destroy its central power core," Dr. Lyris explained. "Once the power core is destroyed, the entire facility will collapse." "Why can't we just bomb it from orbit?" David asked. "Because, Corvin replied, "The Xinthians have built shielding technology that blocks all orbital attacks. The only way to destroy it is from the inside. And the only way to survive long enough to reach the inside is to have soldiers who can survive the toxic atmosphere." David understood immediately. Humans could survive in the toxic atmosphere far longer than any other species. Human lungs, human skin, human bodies were incredibly adaptable. With proper equipment and training, humans could spend several hours on Vorax 9's surface. Other species could manage only minutes. "I will assemble a team," David said. "But I will need support from other species. I cannot do this alone." Over the next week, David assembled the most unusual military unit ever created. He selected 10 human soldiers, all trained in infiltration and combat. He also recruited a team of Valerian technicians led by Elena. The Valerians would not be able to go outside, but they would pilot the shuttle and provide technical support once the team was inside the stronghold. He added Krell warriors for heavy combat support. Their armor plating would protect them for a short time in the toxic atmosphere. Finally, he included Theran scouts who could sense enemy movements through walls and doors. The journey to Vorax 9 took 3 days. During the flight, David watched his team prepare for battle. The humans checked their weapons and their environmental suits. The Krell warriors sharpened their claws and tested their armor. The Theran scouts meditated, opening their minds to sense what lay ahead. Elena worked with her technicians, planning the route they would take through the stronghold's corridors. When they finally arrived at Vorax 9, the planet looked even worse than the images had shown. The sky was a sickly yellow-green color. Storms of toxic gas rolled across the landscape. The ground was cracked and broken, with rivers of caustic liquid flowing through deep canyons. The stronghold entrance was hidden beneath a massive stone formation, protected by defensive turrets and automated guns. Approaching the landing zone, Elena's voice came through the radio. "Setting down now." The shuttle touched down with a gentle bump. David activated his environmental suit's oxygen recycler and checked the readings on his helmet display. The suit would give him 4 hours in the toxic atmosphere. 4 hours to reach the stronghold, find the power core and get out. It was enough time if everything went perfectly. Not enough time if anything went wrong. "Everyone lock and load," David commanded. "Let's move." The team emerged from the shuttle into the nightmare landscape of Vorax 9. Immediately, the toxic gas began attacking anything not protected. The Krell warriors moved slowly in the heavy atmosphere, their armor helping but also slowing them down. The humans moved faster, their lighter suits and incredible adaptability allowing them to navigate the broken terrain with speed and efficiency. They reached the stronghold entrance without being detected. But as they approached the main door, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed across the entrance. The Xinthians knew they were coming. "They have sealed all the doors," Elena reported from the shuttle. "I am trying to hack the security system. Give me 60 seconds. David positioned his team. The Krell warriors formed a defensive line. The human soldiers checked their weapons. The Theran scouts sent out waves of energy to sense what lay beyond the doors. 20 Xinthian warriors on the other side, one of the Therans reported. "They are preparing for combat." Elena's voice crackled through the radio. "Door is open. Go, go, go." The doors slid open and David led the charge into the stronghold. The Krell warriors crashed through like a tidal wave, their massive bodies hitting the Xinthian defenders with incredible force. The human soldiers moved with precision, firing weapons with deadly accuracy. The Xinthians fought back hard, but they were caught off guard. They had expected an orbital bombardment or a slow assault. They had not expected warriors who could survive Vorax 9's atmosphere to reach them so quickly. The battle was fierce and short. When it was over, all the Xinthian defenders lay dead or badly wounded. But David's team had also taken losses. 2 human soldiers were down. 1 Krell warrior was severely injured. "Move forward," David commanded. "We are running out of time." Elena guided them through the stronghold's corridors, using the hacked security systems to open doors and disable defensive systems. The deeper they went, the more Xinthian resistance they encountered. But David's team fought through, driven by the knowledge that this mission could change everything. Finally, they reached the central chamber where the power core sat, a massive structure of glowing crystal and pulsing energy. It was heavily guarded, but David had expected that. He led the final assault himself, charging forward with his team behind him. The battle was desperate and brutal, but in the end, the coalition forces emerged victorious. David placed the explosive charge on the power core. The timer began to count down. 5 minutes. They had 5 minutes to get out of the stronghold and back to the shuttle. Go, go, go! David shouted. The team ran. Behind them, the entire stronghold began to shake. Walls cracked. Floors collapsed. The power core explosion was like a small sun blooming underground. The stronghold came apart in a cascade of destruction. The shuttle lifted off with David's team barely aboard. Below them, the massive Zynthian stronghold collapsed into ruins, destroyed completely. The war had turned. The Zynthians would never recover from this blow. 6 months after the destruction of the Zynthian stronghold on Vorax 9, the war was over. The Zynthian collective, weakened by the loss of their command center and demoralized by their first major defeat, had begun to crumble. Coalition forces pushed forward relentlessly, recapturing lost worlds and freeing colonists from Zynthian occupation. Within months, the remaining Zynthian forces had surrendered or fled to the outer edges of known space. The galaxy was finally at peace. Captain David Nash stood on an observation platform high above the planet Celestia Prime, watching 3 different fleets move through space in perfect coordination. The human warships moved in elegant formations, their sleek hulls reflecting starlight. Beside them flew Krell battlecruisers, massive and powerful, moving with surprising grace for their size. And weaving between them, the smaller but incredibly fast Valerian scout ships danced through the void like crystalline birds. Above them all, invisible but always present, the Theran energy vessels maintained constant surveillance, their presence felt rather than seen. This was something that had never happened in the history of the galaxy. 4 completely different species, each with their own culture and biology and way of thinking, were working together as one unified force. Not because they were forced to. Not because it was convenient. But because they had learned to trust each other. Because they had learned that their differences made them stronger, not weaker. Elena found David standing alone at the observation window. She moved silently as Valerians always did, her crystalline form catching the light and casting rainbow patterns across the floor. She stood beside him without speaking for a long time, both of them watching the fleets move through space. They are calling you the hero of Vorax 9, Elena said finally. Across 17 worlds, humans are telling stories about you. Children are learning your name in schools. Artists are painting pictures of the moment you blocked the ion grenade. Poets are writing songs about your sacrifice. David shook his head. I do not deserve that honor. What I did was not special. Any soldier would have done the same. No, Elena said, and there was certainty in her voice. No, they would not have. That is what the entire galaxy is only now beginning to understand. Humans do things that other species do not do. You sacrifice without calculation. You show courage in the face of certain death. You protect those who cannot protect themselves. These are not common traits. A communication device on David's uniform began to beep. He activated it, and the holographic image of General Corvin appeared before him. The massive Krell general looked tired but satisfied. Behind him, David could see the bridge of the Coalition flagship, filled with officers from every species working side by side. Captain Nash, Corvin said. We are gathering all the military leaders for a ceremony on Celestia Prime. The High Council of the Coalition wants to honor you officially. Will you come? Of course, sir, David replied. The ceremony took place in a great amphitheater carved into the side of a mountain. 10,000 beings from a dozen different species had gathered to witness the event. Humans sat beside Krell warriors. Valerians floated above them on platforms of energy. Therans shimmered in the upper sections. There were species David did not even recognize, all here to celebrate the alliance that had saved the galaxy. General Corvin stepped forward and placed a medal around David's neck. It was a symbol of the unified coalition, showing 4 species standing together, stronger because of their unity rather than despite their differences. When Corvin spoke, his ancient voice echoed through the amphitheater. Captain David Nash, the general said, you came to us as a soldier. You will leave this place as a legend. But more than that, you have become a teacher. You have shown us that strength is not measured only in muscle and firepower. You have shown us that the heart can be as powerful as the mind. You have shown us that sacrifice is not weakness but the highest form of courage. Dr. Lyra stepped forward next. She held a crystal data chip in her hands. We have created a complete record of your physiology and your recovery. This data will be studied for generations. Future medical teams from every species will learn from what your body taught us. Your sacrifice has not ended, Captain. It continues to save lives even now. Elena came forward last. She stood before David, her crystalline face glowing with emotion. You taught me something that day on Kessler 7, she said. You taught me that there are beings in this galaxy who will give everything for others. Not because they expect reward. Not because they calculate benefit. But simply because they understand that every life has infinite value. Your species has a gift, David. It is not a weapon. It is not a tool of war. It is the gift of compassion. And it will change civilization itself. After the ceremony, David walked through the gardens of Celestia Prime with Elena. The gardens were beautiful, filled with plants from 100 different worlds. Humans and Krell and Valerians and Therans and beings David could not even name walked together peacefully, some talking, some silent, all enjoying the simple pleasure of living in a time of peace. What will you do now? Elena asked. Will you return to military service? David was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the battles he had fought, the friends he had lost, the fear and pain that came with war. Then he thought about standing on this observation platform, watching 4 species work together as one unified force. He thought about how one act of courage had changed everything. I think I will stay here, David said. In the stars. I will help build this new era. I will work to make sure that what we have learned about each other does not fade away. The galaxy is changing, Elena. And I want to be part of that change. Elena placed her delicate hand in David's rough human hand. Humanity will reshape civilization itself, she said. Not through conquest. Not through superior weapons. But through the revolutionary concept that every life matters. That love is more powerful than fear. That sacrifice is more noble than survival. Your species has given the galaxy something it desperately needed. As the sun set over Celestia Prime, casting long shadows across the gardens, David stood with Elena and watched 3 fleets continue their coordinated patrol of space. The war was over. The age of humanity among the stars had truly begun. And the galaxy would never be the same again. In the distance, new alliances were forming. New friendships were being forged. Humans were being welcomed not as soldiers or conquerors, but as brothers and sisters. They were being welcomed as beings who understood that compassion was strength, that sacrifice was noble, and that unity was possible even among the most different of species. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. And that lesson had come from one human captain who blocked an ion grenade to save an alien girl.